Restraint of power. You know, that's a pretty important concept in the Bible. It's a view of God that is quite different than the gods of Abraham and Moses, even our day. Restraint of power is the idea that God limits himself. He doesn't use all of the power at his disposal for the benefit of man. Now, you know, you do that as a parent. A parent says, I want my child to eat peas, and I want this child to eat vegetables and to exercise. And so what will I do as someone who wants to influence my child for the good? I will restrain myself by eating peas myself and doing that which I want my child to do. In other words, I will modeling a certain behavior rather than forcing your hand. That's restraint. And when you use words, when God uses words, he restrains himself rather than just being all powerful and cavalier about how he behaves. He limits himself. The biggest way I think that God has limited himself in the Old Testament is by entering into contracts and covenants. You see, that's how you limit yourself. When you say, I will do this if you do that, you've just limited yourself. You allow someone else's behavior to determine how you're going to behave. For instance, you put someone in your home and you charge them rent, and you say, if you'll pay rent for a certain amount of dollars for a certain amount of months or years, then you can live right here. Well, you've just limited yourself because you can't move into that house. You've limited yourself. A parent says, if you will clean up your room, I will take you to the Dairy Queen. If you don't clean up your room, you're grounded. Well, you've limited yourself on both hands. On the one hand, if you're faithful and your child doesn't do what you've called them to do, then you must ground them, or else you weren't faithful. And if you see that they have done what they said they would do, then you have limited yourself because you've already determined that you're going to act in a certain way. Go to the Dairy Queen or give them some new shoes or whatever. So when God says to Cain and Abel, or to Adam and Eve, or to Abraham and Sarah, you behave this way and I will behave this way, he's limited himself. How about the Adam and Eve story? You know, if you eat of that fruit, then I will have to cast you out. That's our covenant. That's our deal. If you don't eat of that fruit, you get to stay here. Or the contracts that we're looking at in this class. Abraham, if you will leave your home and go to the place that I show you, I will make your name great, make you into a great nation, and someday bless all of the ethnics. When he speaks to Moses, he says, you tell the people, if they will obey those 613 laws, I will bless them in physical ways. I will bless them. Take a look at it sometime. Deuteronomy 28. It shows all the ways that God is limiting himself. He says, if you behave yourselves, obey the law, then I will bless you in the city, the country, your crops, your cattle, your children. Deuteronomy 28, verse 7. When your enemy attacks you one direction, I will send him scattered 7 directions. Now, if you don't obey in Deuteronomy 28, starting with verse 15, then all these curses are going to come upon you. So blessings and curses are the results of obedience or disobedience. And God limits himself by entering into a covenant. Now, of course, in the New Testament, restraint of power is seen when Jesus leaves heaven, restrains himself, puts himself in human form. He can only be at one place at one time. And of course, walking the dusty streets of Palestine. When he could have been in heaven, he's restrained himself. But that's BTH 102. But a key concept is restraint of power or self-limitation for the good of others. When someone owes you money and you don't insist on it, that's called mercy. When someone does you wrong and you clean off the slate, that's called forgiveness. That's all restraint of power. It is a godly characteristic, and it was a it was probably the greatest exhibition of God's power to limit his power. We'll be chatting about this more as we move along. Restraint of power.